Good afternoon, everyone. As it's been said, I'm Cassia. I work at Senai Mário Amato in São Bernardo do Campo. So I'm a little bit different from people who talked in the morning. I'm looking towards education. When I was invited to come here, they said talk a little bit about microplastics because everybody hears this word microplastics, but many times we don't know where it comes from. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that, but I will present to you a presentation that we do for the consumers, the students, the parents, people who were mentioned in the morning that we need to give them awareness. The theme will be microplastics, but the title of my speech is Plastic, a Complex Relationship. I'm just confirming this. I'm ratifying what was said in the morning relating to the importance of plastic. What is the importance of plastic in human evolution? Now, it's impossible to think about living without plastic. And the revolution is due to plastic. We can't think about life without plastic. So I'm gonna make mine Inger's words. He said, plastics in many ways contribute positively to society. There is therefore a dark side. The way how we produce it, use it, and eliminate plastics pollutes the ecosystems, creates risks for human health, and deepens the climate crisis. This is true, but this. Can you hear me? Yeah, yeah. Depends on the culture. So this sentence talks about the dark side, but this dark side can't be talked about. We need to check and always mention positivity. So, what do we have about plastics? It promotes versatility, innovation, no doubts about that, because it is a very light material, durable, and versatile. Apart from that, it has a positive impact when we talk about health, like we talked this morning when we had the pandemics related to transport, agriculture. The industry itself, many people here work in the industry. We know that, but we need to promote this vision when we look at this image here. I got just two rooms from a home, a bedroom, and the kitchen. So, all these materials here, they are only possible because of a polymer that they have passive of being used. As an educator, I'm not a teacher, I'm an educator. When I see that message and this presentation, we pass on to all our visitors when they come to our school. We do this awareness process. So, we show here that these electronic products, they were developed because electroelectronics is very advanced. But could you do it without the polymers? No. So, when you see a situation like this, and I didn't mention all devices, equipment, products that are present on these pictures. So this awareness we have. We have because the audience here is very select. Everybody here studied. But we need to think that to people who are now 16, 17, that are the people that will continue our history. We have at Senai an audience that is this age I mentioned. With the new grade school, they have to go through it, and do a technical course at the same time. And we have these students. They come, they 100% of the students that come to us are there because they have to create plastic. What did they want? Systems, multi-mails, multimedia. They didn't want to make plastic. When they go in as an obligation, they start seeing this where they think this is plastic. The cell phone you have is passable because it's passive because it's plastic. It's not so much for the students. We always invite the parents to visit and we make this presentation and the parents say, is that what they're going to learn? Working with plastics? What is this plastic? So parents or brothers or uncles, this point of view we know, but we need to make people aware of. This youth that's coming around, they are the biggest consumers, but they have no idea of that. So we need to change this point of view. With that, what do we have? What are the benefits? I put some here. So when you look at packaging, I don't need to say that we need packaging, but there is the dark side of packaging that I use, and in a day, an hour, this packaging will turn into plastic residue. And if it's not thrown or put in the right place, it's gonna pollute my environment in health. How could we do without syringes, masks, disposable masks, without products, hoses, or blood bags? Everything is done using a polymer. I know it, but you need to talk about it. When you talk about automobilistic area, aeronautics, everything is polymers. So let people know these products are essential. And then you enter in civil construction area, which is the area where PVC is most consumed. You don't remember that your tubes, your connections are made out of PVC, which is the same PVC. The essence of the polymer is the same, that you just used those films that we use in the kitchen, and I wrapped some food there, then I get it and throw it away. It's the same one. Chemically, it's the same. But how do I change that? How do I turn this? How do I turn this material from civil construction that's been there for at least it can last around 30 years, and it's important, and remove it from packaging that lasts 1 hour, 15 days? Here, I put some images. I don't know about you, but can you see yourselves without packaging and wrappings that are there on the right hand side? Can you think about going to a hospital and not having the devices that only exist because the carcass, most of the parts need polymers? The cars are there. All the improvement that we have is made because we use polymers, plastic materials. Abiplast for me is the best source of trustworthy data. Simone, that works at Abiplast, is my colleague from Senai. She works there these days. So I say that nowadays we believe this data. So when we look at this panorama, we know that they are real trustworthy data. So when you look at this kind of panorama, you have on one hand the amount of companies and the amount of jobs. I, for example, at night, 100% of my students work. In which area? This area. They are the first promoters that will produce, but we look on the right hand side. They will also have to promote recycling of these materials. They are consumers, workers on the left hand side, but they need to keep that in mind to promote what's on the right hand side. Then we come to the life cycle. When we look at the orange products, they are perfect. The ones in green, even better. Half life cycle, but what's the problem? What's in blue? What's in blue? That adds up to 35.3%, which are the materials with a short life cycle. And from this 35%, 35.3%, that comes the dark side of plastic. Why does this happen? Because many people say the waste, the products that have short life cycles are exposed wrongly and they can become microplastics. If you ask people what microplastics really is, we have a law, a rule that is ISO 9160, and it defines what are microplastics. They are solid plastic particles that are not soluble in water with dimensions between 1 micron and 1000 microns. So then there is this term called large microplastics, which is a bit redundant, which will be between 1 and 5 millimeters. And this picture on the right represents that. And we have two sources, the primary source and the secondary source of microplastics. The primary source are the ones that are produced on purpose, and I put the main sources here. I will use microplastics in on the size of 1 micron up to 5 millimeters to be able to use them as exfoliators, so they are manufactured to have that size. But the microplastic from secondary sources, which come from the fragmentation of my macropolymers, usually from packaging, and the materials that were wrongly disposed of. Look in here, the primary microplastics, these are the main sources, and the secondary microplastics. This image here, we can see better. The main origins are the materials that will degrade, especially by exposition to acid rain, to things, the environment, and they will degrade and become small particles. So one of the big sources are clothes when we wash them, or what we call the granules, they call also nurdles. This other image on the left hand side talks about volume. When we think about fibers from clothing, it's 35%. So the textile fibers will add up to 35%. When we talk about tire residue due to use, it's 28%. The granules that many times in companies we have what we call swiping, they are only 0.3%. The dust from the cities adds up to 24%. Maritime residue, they are 3.7, and some hygiene products about 2%. When we look, the textile fibers are the main one, so that waste that we threw away, is it a problem? Yes. But the main problem, I don't know if you knew it, it's from clothes washing. 37%. I put some data here from the European Union. It shows cosmetics. Many times, people, I teach a course of postgrad for packaging, and the student said to me, "Oh, but cosmetics are one of the big sources of microplastics." If we look at it, 7% of cosmetics that go through water, and 1% have not gone through water, but the EU has started working on that, and it's going down. So is it a problem, the microplastics that come from cosmetics? Well, we're working on them. So what do we need to think about? What's the origin? What can we do from it? So the big problem of microplastics is when I try to remove them, they are not removed in a waste or a sewage removal treatment because of their size. And they are micro. So this week still, they questioned to me, what if we filter? Filtration. Okay, it's a way. If I start developing filters that can remove them, and then I said, what? It's work that we have to do. And there's a lot of work done in this area. The big problem is we generate microplastics? I just showed you. The majority comes from clothes during washing. Is that gonna be generated? Yes, because what are we gonna do? Wash, dry washing, Or we do what? Put a filter. How am I gonna filter that? I don't see a problem. Waste, they degrade, they fragment themselves, they become microplastics, and they will be assimilated by planktons, crustaceans, and humans. The microplastics, are they harmful? Well, everybody says that. Thankfully, the polyethylenes and polypropylenes, there are the main polymers there are in the human body as plastics. They are non-toxic, they are inert, but they say, but the problem is that the polymers may absorb or adsorb us of some toxic substances. Sometimes I say that. Say, no, it's the particle that is too small and it was harmful. No, the lack of information leads to this dark side of the polymers. What can happen? In the morning when I arrived, I talked about this. And it was exactly the subject that I mentioned. PE and PP will absorb alcohol, other substances. It's not compatible. So if I go into chemistry, people say, what's she talking about? It won't, because there needs to be an attraction from my polyethylene and polypropylene. The most of microplastics come from those two. They can adsorb or absorb some substances and be a way for these substances to be taken into our bodies. You get it? But it's not the plastics that will be harmful. So what happens? Are plastics, is plastic the problem, the number one villain of the environment? Uh, can we live without them? No. They are essential in their micro way and also nanometric. It's another size of particle that also appears there, but what can we do? Can we live without plastics? No, we can't. We can't. So the microplastics come from macroplastics. But how can we change that? What are our challenges for a sustainable future? Living without them, it will be difficult. Oh, but let's substitute the packaging instead of plastic, paper. When you have a nuclear MRI, oh, the equipment has plastics there. How can you live without this equipment, without plastics? You can't. So what do we need to do? Try to lower, especially the waste of the one-use waste from short life cycle. How can we do that? Recycling, reusing. How can I improve that? I can use biodegradable plastics, but one of the main points that I mention is that it doesn't matter if it's microplastics, nanoplastics, if it's my plastic bottle. We need to look at these indexes. We need to recycle. But when do I start? Because I started talking about the youth, the students that are coming, the teenagers. We need to teach.
We need to see and say, look, you dispose and separate because it becomes much easier. How do we control this? And this data here only shows that the recycling part is the way. So these data is from 2022, and we had an increase in the number of employment positions, the amount that is being recycled. But who does that? It's us, the generation that is coming. But I always say it has to do with education. So what do I do with that? At any size, at any scale, we need to educate. We need to set the example. So everybody talks about Tampinha Legal, that is wonderful. At school, I don't know if you know Senai Maria Mato, but it has 52,000 square meters and 38,000 meters of constructed area. And there, I'm one of the persons that, throws the bottle and separates the cap. And they do that, and we separate that. And I think I did not update my presentation, but what do I do? We conduct projects in the technical course on plastic, on the chemistry course, on the polymers course and the post-graduation course, because this is a daily thing. We need to break this link, stop that idea that plastic is bad. But plastic that has a normal life cycle is good. But plastic that has a short life cycle is not good because it's a polymer. And people say, oh, you cannot recycle. Who said so? You can recycle and use it as a load. The BMC, for example, the young girl goes to the land, throw it away and goes throw it in the landfill. So people that work with me do that on a daily basis. So what do I want to say to wrap up? It was said that it has to be a commitment from the industry. Of course, there has to be, but we need to talk about it. It's no use uh, that we are all here and we know that plastic's good and it's necessary, you know. And but microplastics exist. They do exist. Yes. What can I do? We are still researching filters, barriers, membranes to mitigate that, but what do we need to have in terms of commitment? It is fundamental. Let's conduct studies. Let's make people aware of it because if people are not aware of that, you mentioned Japan here. Why does Japan do that? Because they are aware, they're conscious that they know that they need to pick up the bottle, separate the label, and then put it to recycle. So here, nobody takes off the cap that is of polyethylene and separates from the PET bottle. So we have to set the example, but we conduct a lot of research on what do I do with that afterwards, because that is our commitment. I'm an educator. I'm educating people to be our executors in the future. And young people need to be made conscious because if we don't make them aware, things are only going to get worse. So education, knowledge is the driver to do that, be it micro, macro, or nanoplastic. So we need to make people aware. Thank you very much. Thank you, Cassia. Just to give you a plate, a thankful plate for you, is Lucio from the Institute of Research at USP. Thank you, Julio. Thank you, Cassia.